Well, today I'm going to show you how to create a grungy black and white portrait in Photoshop. Hi, I'm Joel Grimes. I am a working commercial advertising photographer and have been doing this almost 40 years. And I love sharing with you guys some of the things I do, not only in the capture side, the retouch side, and even the business side, which I love to share people on how to make a living with their camera. And so I hope you're following along. Hit that subscribe button and make some comments. I'd love to hear from you, and hit that notification bell. All right, so I want to show you guys how to take a color image that I've shot in my camera and then convert it into a grungy sort of black and white look that I want to hang on my wall. I love taking an image and sort of going through the creative process, not only in the capture side, but also on the retouch side. I want to make my image look amazing, and so do you. So I'm going to show you how it's very simple on how I go and create this grungy look. Now, I'm going to give you guys access to a preset that I have in Bridge. It's like Lightroom, but it's a preset for Bridge that you can load, and you can go and click and get that grungy look with one click of the keyboard. So look for that. It's going to be below where you can download that. I'd love to have you guys share that with you. So let's get started on how I go and create this sort of grungy portrait. So here we have the color version of Otis. Let me get my Wacom pen here. And what I want to show you here is that you see it's square. Well, I actually did a stitch here, so I strobed him outdoors, and then I moved my camera to the left, fired a frame, moved it to the right. I brought it into photo merge, and I ended up blending those or merging those together. And then I had plenty of room over here, but I thought, you know what, I like square. And one of the reasons I like square is because coming from the old days of film where they had square cameras, I kind of like that look. So it kind of centers them up. So that's why it's square. So let's do this first. We're going to take and duplicate the layers, Command J. So we have two layers, and this guy is, beautiful in terms of gradient sky, but I want to add a little bit of clouds to it. So, well, guess what Photoshop has now? We have a sky replacement. Now, I've been replacing my skies for years. I feel like I have plenty of freedom to do that. Now we can do it in Photoshop with a click of a button. It's pretty simple. This sky here is one I just downloaded. It's a little JPEG. I just dropped it in there. There's other options that Photoshop gives you if you don't have any skies. I hope you go out and create your own skies. I love doing that. So sometimes I pull over the side of the road and I'll just be driving along and I'll say, oh, that looks like a good sky. I can drop that in for later. So, but we're going to use this one. This is the one I used in the demo that I sort of prepared for you guys. So now let's take a look. I'm not going to go into this too much. There's a lot of tutorials on YouTube that sort of explain all this, but what I want to do is I want to look at my edges here, and I don't want to bleed too much into him. So I think if we go this way, you see how it bleeds into his face there and his hat and all that. So we want to just slide that, and I think it defaults pretty good. Now I'm going to pull back this guy in a minute when it brings it over into Photoshop, or in my layer. But let's just take a look at it. Let's say we're going to flip it. Yeah, I think we're going to flip it. I don't know if I flipped it in the one I just kind of did a preview, but anyways, I think that looks good. The sun's coming from this way. I believe that gives it a sense that it's more realistic. So we're going to say okay. So now look over here. We've got this whole set of layers that it brought over with it. And so here's the good news, is that I can go and play around with this a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this sky, not the mask, and I'm going to go Command T. So there is my sky that it picked up, but I want to bring down the top of the sky, hold down the Shift, and give me a little more like just a clean black, sort of more of a black top to it. So to frame him in, maybe I don't go that far down, maybe just about right there. I can bring this up a little bit too to see what sort of how that fits in there. I think that's pretty good right there. So let's say OK, hit enter. And then I'm going to go over here to my mask. So let's make sure it's clicked. Go over here to my brush, a black brush, 100% flow opacity. And I'm just going to paint in just to make sure if there was any bleeding that happened on that mask, it's cleaned up. All right. And if you get lost, hit the back space right underneath the, or backslash underneath the delete, and that'll show you where that mask is. All right. Okay. We're going to take the opacity from the sky, go back to the sky, and we're going to pull it down so it's a little more subtle. And what that does too is it kind of hides if there's any issues with the mask. It kind of blends really nice. All right, so let's take, and I'm going to desaturate that sky just a tad. So we're going to go over here to my adjustment layers, go to hue saturation. We're going to connect that to just the sky. So we do a clipping by holding down the option, and I go in between the two layers and just click. And now you see a little arrow that tells me it's connected to just the sky, not the whole image below. And I go over here and I'm just going to pull the desaturation back just a little bit. All right, we're going to turn this into black and white, but I don't want that sky to be too blue, because when I convert it, it's going to get a little bit too neon, and it's going to get the blacks too I don't know. It just, when I did the test, I know that I want to desaturate, and I desaturate my images a lot anyways. All right, so we've got that step done. So we're going to collapse that, and we'll go to the next step, which I'm going to make and bring out his eyes a little bit. So we're going to go Shift Command N, makes a blank layer, but we're going to go overlay, fill it with 50% gray. So I think most of you know this little trick here. So we're going to go dodge, we're going to go to mid-tones, and let's keep it about 7. And I want to bring out his eyes. So we're on that layer. So we're just going to paint in here a little bit as an overall sort of pull him out detail. And then I'm going to make my brush a little smaller, and I just want to get a little bit more of his eyes. You don't want to go too far, because then it looks really hokey. So one of the things I do a lot, and I've had people ask me this, especially when I teach Photoshop live, is I always go down small again. Because if I've overdone his eyes, I'm going to be able to pick that up. All right, that looks pretty good. I might take and just pull a little bit of detail out of that little, I guess, I don't know what that is. Wear and tear on the cowboy. All right. We're also going to flip it over to burn, and we're going to just take the highlight on his hand down just a little bit. So let's make sure that's not too much of a burn there. Maybe right on that little bit of his beard there. Just on the sleeve a little bit. So let's go back down, take a look. Up, his pants have a little bit too much of a hot spot there too. And you can kind of just, your eye will tell you what needs to be fixed there. All right, so we've got that done. So let's do a gradient. Oh, well, let's do a vignette. So we're going to go to Levels, go over here to the Gradient tool, and we're going to do this circular, which is, I think they call it a radial gradient. Yep, radial gradient. It's a little round one. We pull from the center down, and you can see my mask over here has a black center with a white, it's not a white mask, but you can see the gradient. And then we go over here to the properties, and we're going to pull it down a little bit there. All right, that looks pretty good. Kind of makes him pop. All right, the next step is, I think I'm going to pull a little bit more on the bottom and a little bit more on the top of gradient. So we're going to do that again, Levels. We're going to go to gradient, but this time we're going to go to the first one, which is the linear gradient. Let's pull from the bottom first, so we can hold the Shift key down, so it's a straight pull, right about there. Let go. Now, I had the black as the foreground, which is not the color I want. Doesn't matter. I just Command I, flip it, and we go to my properties, and we're going to pull it down just a little bit more. And let's do that to the top. Levels. Same thing, hold the shift, pull down, and invert it. Hit properties, pull it down just a little bit. Now, if that mask encroaches into his face, we click on the mask, we go to my brush, and we go 100%, and we're on a black brush, we can kind of bring back that detail, if in fact that did darken his face. So let's go small again. It's looking pretty good. All right, so at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add a black and white and see how we're looking. So we're going to go over here to my levels, my adjustment layers, black and white, and let's go small again. Not bad. We haven't added our grunge yet. I'm going to show you that in a minute. But let's take a look at my slider, black and white sliders over here, and I can make they're the color sliders, but they're going to adjust the tones, even though it's we have black and white. We can adjust the tones. So let's see. Do we want the grass to go lighter or darker? Watch his face too. So I'm going to darken it down just a little bit so he pops. Let's see, the red down. Yeah, a little more grunge there. The red down. Let's see the blue. I don't want to go too dark on the top there, but let's just knock that blue down just a little bit. We're not going to be locked in yet. So okay, so that's getting pretty close, but we don't have our grunge, and this is where I guess you'd say the whole tutorial is directing toward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift, Option, Command E. That's going to give me a layer that's snapped, or they call it merged visible, or whatever they call that. It's a compacted version of all these up top. So so let's say I turn these off or have that one on. That's still everything we did below. So it's a stamped version of everything below. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control right click, and we're going to go Convert to Smart Object. Now the reason why I'm doing that is I want to be able to have the freedom to later play with this next step I'm going to show you. I'm not going to be locked in. So if I run, say, Camera Raw filter right now, and I do an adjustment, and later I go, I don't like that, I have to start all over on this. Not on the bottom, but on this snap visible layer. So by making it a smart object, I have the freedom to go back. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over here to Filter, Camera Raw. It's going to bring it in. And we're going to go down and we're going to load. This is where you can take this preset I'm going to give you, and you can load it into your bridge. And we're going to, with one click here, it's Joel Grunge Portrait, hit load. And just like that, I've got this snappy, grungy look that I've done. Now, it's all the settings are over here. So if you want to see what I've done, it's all over here. And if you want to fine tune it, it's all here. So if you go down to, let's say, effects, I've added just 8 amount of grain here. And I did a little more vignetting here, so you can take that off if you don't want. Well, you double tap it. Let's see if it goes to 0. Yeah, double tap goes to 0. But we'll leave that a little bit there, a little bit of vignetting. So what else did I do? Color mixing. Well, it's a black and white, so that step's not allowed. Going to give us an option there. Details. Add a little bit of sharpening. Under basics, I've got highlights, textures. All that has been preset to my liking, but you can fine tune it. So let's say OK. So there it is. We can close it down. That's without that grunge effect. There it is with it. I think it looks incredible. So, but you have the freedom to, and you can do this in color. So if I go and take the black and white off, and we're going to go to here and hit Shift Option Command E. That's going to give me a merged to visible there, and then I can go and do my convert to smart object. It takes a second because it takes a lot of memory to do this. And you have options where you could run this grunge in color. All right, so now we go over to Filter, we go to Camera Raw, and we could go over here and hit black and white. And then we could go to our color mix and do a little bit of adjusting in here too. Into the raw side, which is not a bad way to do that. But we're going to take that off for a second. So we go over here and we're going to go load setting. We're going to go to Joel's portrait or Joel's grunge portrait effect. And there we have it's pretty saturated. It's too saturated for me. I would definitely from there go and do a desaturation if I was going to keep this to color. But I want it in black and white. So let's go back up to here. So now, here's the beauty is, I can go over here and double click this raw filter and say, I want a little more contrast. So pull that down there. Let's hold the highlights back a little bit more. Let's open the shadows up a little bit more. Let's take the white balance. Let's see. Got to be careful because I don't want to blow out that section right there. Maybe pull the blacks down. A little more grunge there. Let's go with shadows a little bit more. All right, and hit OK. Now I can do this all day long as I can keep working, and I always go and I put this on black. Make it small. Bring it back up. And I noticed that when I opened the shadows up, it underneath that hat, it kind of picked up some stuff. I would clean that up. There's, also when you do the little grunge effect, it starts to pick up little lint on his vest and different things. That would all have to be cleaned up. But overall, that's pretty snappy portrait, and I think that is lots of fun. So you could do this on just a really tight a face, or here's he's full length. Once you kind of see, go into that that preset and go into my sliders and see what I've done, and that'll give you an idea of well, number one, what you might want to fine tune, or what I'm doing to get that grunge look, so that you can build it yourself later or add to it. You can also you could take 2 layers, you could take and create 2 snap visibles, and you can create a raw filter, give your effect that you want, and then go and do it again, but then really say grunge the face, but not as much of the sky, or make a mask, and then you paint out what you don't want the effect to show up. So there's a lot of variables in there. That's why I love Photoshop so much, is that it gives you an infinite amount of options that you can do. Don't be overwhelmed with the process. Just go out and practice. Go out and find a great subject, and then bring it into Photoshop and create a very grungy, dramatic portrait. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to download that preset. And if you're a Lightroom person, you can take the exact same sliders that I used and bring them over you can't take that preset over, but you can go and mimic that in Lightroom and then build your own, or save it, and you have your own preset for yourself.